For those of you that are not local Chicagoans, first of all, welcome. We're delighted to have you here. But a quick introduction to who the Metropolitan Planning Council is. For more than 80 years, we have been a bridge builder, literally connecting the dots between issues and sectors. So we work across business and government and community organizations to solve the region's most pressing economic development and community development challenges. That kind of approach where we bring resources, ideas, data, advocacy together is very relevant to the challenges facing our Chicago rivers. And no question, we have some challenges. This fits squarely within the rubric of major challenges. This is a historic photo, could have accompanied Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. This is called the Collateral Channel, and it's along the south branch of the Chicago River, where we used to, during the time of the Chicago Union Stockyards, push all the meatpacking waste into the river. And so it became affectionately and dramatically known as Bubbly Creek, as it is still referred to by many longtime Chicagoans today. So this was a mistake of a different era, and it takes years to set something like this right. It is something that we're still working on. So this man is literally walking on water. This is an image probably more familiar today. This is an earlier segment of Chicago's Riverwalk along the Loop on a day that we're famous for, St. Patrick's Day, where we dye the river green. And this is just a small segment of Chicago's riverfronts today. For a city that celebrates and is known for 26 miles of open, free, and clear lakefront, our 100+ miles of riverfront is a challenge we certainly are up to. And we've made progress. Many might be surprised to learn that the Chicago's Rivers Water Quality Index has improved. A recent rating in 2010 gave us an index score of 93 out of 100, representing improvement. What does that mean? Well, back in 1970, there were 10 species that called the Chicago River home, and today more than 70 species of wildlife, including these otters, do so. For those of you who are visiting, I hope that you have had a chance or will take a chance to walk along the new segments of Chicago's Riverwalk. Another thing that you should be sure to take in is our 606 Trail. We're actually giving an award to that effort later today. Chicago's Riverwalk is one of those celebratory public spaces. It's a new city attraction, and I think it has exceeded many of our expectations. It's designed by actually one of the Metropolitan Planning Council's board members, something we're very proud of, Carol Ross-Barney. And they're designed in rooms between each of the intersecting rivers, the bridges that bisect the river. And so there is or there will be within these 6 rooms a place to launch kayaks, to see theater performances, to sip a glass of Chardonnay at the city winery, all sorts of active and natural uses. This is also of note because this Riverwalk was financed through federal TIFIA loans repaid by concession revenue. So it's also an example of Chicago pointing the way with innovative financing techniques that are becoming so much more important to all of our communities. But why rivers? Why now? Well, consider the following. The water quality of our rivers is at a turning point. Improvement, but much more attention about need for additional improvement. Recreational demand is dramatically on the rise. Real estate development is creating pressures and opportunities. There is specialized industrial expansion in certain segments. Walkers and bikers are stymied by limited access along the entire system's 100+ miles. And there's uncertainty about invasive species. Sound complicated? Yes, it is. But that is exactly why this is the right moment for Chicago to turn its attention to creating the vision and the action plan for Chicago's rivers. This includes the Calumet River on the southeast side, the north and south branch of the Chicago River, and the Des Plaines River. These are all within the city of Chicago's limits. Obviously, the entire region's river network is of interest to us as a metropolitan planning organization, but we are working in partnership with the city of Chicago on this first segment. It is a partnership with many parts, and that's what's making it so strong. This was initiated in partnership between the City of Chicago, Mayor Emanuel, and Metropolitan Planning Council, along with the Friends of the Chicago River, and it's supported through 3 other very strong partners, the Joyce Foundation, the Chicago Community Trust, and ArcelorMittal. We have just been engaging the public since this spring. Dozens of community outreach meetings, intensive research, mapping, looking at existing plans, and our first phase, our first deadline is by summer next year. We have to deliver a vision in words and in images of what Chicago's rivers can be. Our hope is to capture the imagination of Chicagoans and to get people motivated to move that action agenda forward. And if we do our job well, we'll even have some things moving along at the time that the report is released next summer. So you can tell we're at the idea generation stage, which is why I was particularly glad to join you today, because I have a feeling you will have some great ideas. And I also hope to motivate you to borrow ideas and adapt them from your communities that we're experimenting with here. So, what do people think about the river system today? Well, we began our project with a bilingual online survey. 3,749 people responded over the course of a few months, and they represented 93% of Chicago's zip codes, so pretty good coverage. We asked people to tell us their impressions, both of the river system as a whole and also of the segment that they were most familiar with. As you can see from this graphic, or maybe you can't see because the words aren't easy to discern, but in 4 of those 5 clusters and the different geographies, you'll see the adjective dirty. So that was one of the most volunteered adjectives, and it just reinforces we've got quite a bit of work to do. People were also asked to volunteer positive words to describe sections of the rivers that, what do they value? And words like potential, tourism, neighborhood emerged. When asked what people's hopes and dreams were, we heard a lot of different ideas. The 5 that were most frequent were clean, easy to get to, active, parks, and exercise. Clearly there's a strong desire to have our riverfronts be more like our lakefront. And in fact, more Chicagoans live near our riverfronts than our lakefront, given the mileage I was talking about before. It's about 4 times the waterfront as our lakefront. And it's also a system that greatly affects our Latino population, given the locations. It's worth noting that a lot of these adjectives that I'm sharing are about experiences, qualities. They're not so much about specific uses. And what we draw from that is that industry and homes along the riverfront can be as attractive and easy to get to, and should be, as park space and trails and wildlife. Some of the desired activities: picture a brewery, a manufacturing center, perhaps digital manufacturing, condominiums, affordable housing. Actually, these cannot happen immediately on Chicago's lakefront because of our unique lakefront protection ordinance. So our riverfront can and should welcome a whole range of uses. Here are some images of Ozinga Concrete, not so far down Chicago's south branch of the river. They actually need to be close to the downtown area, and we need them to be there because they have a product that needs to be delivered just on time to construction sites in the loop. Access is an issue that is of great public concern, and as you can see from this graphic, great variability in different segments. The vast majority of the 133.2 miles of our riverfront are not accessible to the public. The exceptions are the further north branch of the Chicago River, most of the Des Plaines, which is on the northwest side, and of course the Riverwalk downtown. So we want to open up access to the rivers where appropriate, but we also want to ensure that they are integrated with other assets across the region, our landscape of parks, preserves, trails, lakes, and of course, neighborhoods. Because really, what fun is a riverfront if you can't walk or bike or sit alongside it. I love this image of people who had to obviously climb over the railing to get to their river. So clearly there's a lot of potential. If you just take a glance at these circles and ovals, what they represent is gaps. These are gaps in trail access along Chicago's river system. We're in the process of reimagining that trail system to coexist with balancing the other uses. The most prominent gaps are on the south side of the city, and so clearly we need to focus on infrastructure that addresses this lack of access and to truly reorient our thinking and then our investments toward the river. Safety is another concern as recreational uses along the river increase. Managing people and traffic is, by definition, complicated. There are a number of government actors with jurisdiction for various aspects of the river safety and traffic management. There's sometimes confusion, and there's sometimes gaps of enforcement. What's more, with some of the newer boat operators we see, and rental companies, we see a wide range of knowledge and experience with maritime safety and traffic rules. A lot of these operators require just a few minutes of training before turning over the keys. Great Rivers Chicago is exploring how to ensure that this collaboration and coordination occurs across all these parties. These are some of the players that we've brought together around one table. We want all users, from kayakers to barge operators, as you're seeing in this picture, not a unique shot in Chicago, have to be able to respect those laws and be able to enjoy the river together. I want to step back and revisit the issue of water quality briefly with this group because of your expertise. It continues to be a top concern to Chicago and beyond, and we've come pretty far in the past 4 decades. But Chicago's sewer system has its challenges. Like so many cities and regions, it is combined. Storm sewers, wastewater sewers are the same system. And when rainfall hits us with 3/4 of an inch or more, we typically have a combined sewer overflow, or CSO. Last year, we had 41 such incidents where the discharge affected human and other species by discharges into Lake Michigan and into our rivers. This reality is being addressed in part through the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District's Deep Tunnel project, but we know that that project was conceived many decades ago. It was based on climate forecasting and weather pattern forecasting that was the best available information at the time. So even when completed, given climate change and extreme weather, it will not solve all of our problems. Great Rivers Chicago, this initiative, can see a future for Chicago's rivers where parts of our river system are swimmable, not unlike the Boston area's Charles River pictured here. To get there is a heavy lift. We need not only to continue to make advancement and investments in water quality, stormwater management, that's gray and green infrastructure, policies, and the infrastructure to support that, but we need to reconnect more Chicagoans to their rivers so they care and they support this investment. We know the river system is invaluable and is interdependent with our Great Lakes. So we need a few things. Better branding helps. Marketing is always useful, but better policies is really where it starts to unlock the potential of our rivers and riverfronts. So here are some images of the strong opportunities for development along our rivers that can bring people together, creating more vibrant communities, spurring growth of our metropolitan region. You may not be aware when you walk around the city today, you see such vibrancy, but across metropolitan regions, Chicago has been growing at a more anemic pace, losing more population and not experiencing the turnaround to as great of extent as other competitor locations. So the fact that the river is a magnet is a good thing, but competing uses for land is something that we need to broker and negotiate. We hope that Great Rivers Chicago will be part of this reaching of consensus. Just recently, this mural was installed at O'Hare Airport. You might recognize it as an abstract depiction of the city of Chicago and the Chicago metropolitan region. Land to the left, water to the right. That's how we've long thought of ourselves. And that has become so deeply ingrained that the muralists here did not even think to add our rivers. So we are this place of land and lake, and that's something to celebrate. In the future, we hope that we can be a place of land and lake and beautiful rivers. Clearly, we have not always been good stewards of our river system. They've been underappreciated, they've been underinvested in, they've been dumping grounds. I've been so encouraged by the energy, commitment, collaboration. You know this to be one of Chicago's hallmarks, that we have a range of strong institutions and strong leaders that actually expect a constant reinvention of this place we call home and are willing to work together on that. So that's the exciting part about Great Rivers Chicago. I hope some of this has been useful to you. We do have a website, greatriverschicago.com, where there's lots of information. And I look forward to any questions or comments that you have so that we can learn as well from your experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Those are wonderful comments and wonderful images of the vision that the community is developing for its waterfront and its river systems. I think we have a few moments for questions. If I may, I'd like to start with one quick observation and one quick question. I loved your use of the language, their river, as opposed, I mean, it really personalizes it very much. And to that extent, I'd like to ask you a question, because we're in Michigan, we're doing a lot of similar visioning around waterways and waterfronts. One of the questions we continue to struggle with is, how does changing people's relationships with water and waterfronts, in this case rivers, how does it change people? We know that it can change economies and it can change, you know, cost of real estate, and there's businesses that develop, but how does it change people?
I'm reflecting back on some of those adjectives I shared with you. Obviously, there was the negatives, but on the positives, when people said what they already appreciate or what they would love to be able to experience, you heard a lot of active use descriptors. People want to exercise. They feel like they don't have enough parkland nearby. They don't feel like they have the places just to stroll. We think of favorite vacations or favorite destinations, and it's often the experience of walking and being able to have that experience with family and friends. So that the linear nature of our river system, I think that's why the 606 trail has been an astounding success. Here we just took a abandoned rail yard. It's 2.7 miles long, and it is packed. So clearly there's this untapped desire for people to have something nearby and accessible, and I think the calming effect that we all know to be true of the added water aspect is beauty, and in a fast-paced world, we all need that. So I think it will have a ripple effect as far as health, and that's physical and mental health for our residents, which can't be undervalued.
Thank you.
I want to thank you very much for your presentation. All of your slides and your description reminded me exactly of what we've been doing in the Buffalo River in Buffalo, New York. Very similar types of challenges that you've described. We've been making some great progress in the Buffalo River, and putting more and more property, taking it from old industrial, getting it back into the public sector, increasing public access. One of the challenges that we're finding now is, how do we maintain this going into the future? A lot of this open space, public space, the city itself does not, from a budgetary standpoint, they're already stressed to take on more parkland, more space. So I'm wondering if you've created any kind of special mechanisms to help fund the long-term maintenance of these new spaces you're developing.
Given the magnitude, this is a challenge we're grappling with right now with Great Rivers Chicago is how do we put together a financial model that can support the vision. I can point to a few examples from Chicago. When Millennium Park was created a decade ago, it used the underground parking revenues to float parking revenue bonds. Similarly, the Riverwalk, I mentioned the TIFIA grant proceed, concession revenues are being used to pay off. Now, those are both in the central area where there's huge real estate demand. It's not the same in all stretches of our river system that goes throughout many, many neighborhoods, including some of our poorest neighborhoods. However, the linked development concept, I think, can still apply, given real estate demand and the fact that people want to be by water features. There is an opportunity not just for set-asides, which is a small step that Chicago had taken a number of years ago for a 30-foot setback. The difficulty is, of course, when there are long-standing uses, you've got this stub of a trail and then nothing. And then the next development that happened adds a stub of a trail with no connectivity. And this is exactly what we're grappling with. I look to major metropolitan areas like New York with its positive experience of real estate development supported park maintenance corporations for most of their new parks. And I think we can adapt some of these ideas even to an urban environment where you're talking about hot markets and weak markets together. That whole continuum means that there may be, at least in part, mechanisms to unlock potential like restaurant development, mixed use and housing development in certain areas that kicks off a revenue stream that can support the natural area development and the trail development in other locations. There will be big costs, and so we have to get creative. But what I'm describing is no different than any other form of infrastructure. How are we going to fund stormwater improvements? How are we going to fund transportation improvements? And unfortunately, both in Canada and in the U.S., we're in a self-help era where we have to figure it out ourselves.
Thank you, John. Just really a comment. From Ohio, we've been to Chicago many times, never did the river tour. And last Sunday night, several of us from Ohio took the river tour. And I tell you, I was extremely impressed, not only with the amount of activity on the river, and to your point, I mean, people like being around the water. And so it was just a great experience, and I think that kind of builds on itself. People start getting that appreciation for it. But as an outsider, it gave us a whole different view and perspective of Chicago and what's going on and the work that you've done. So I just more of a comment of commending you for your actions and just encourage you to continue the work. It's a great asset.
I'm delighted to hear you got out there, and perhaps we should make that a requirement for every Chicagoan because it really is a transformative experience.
Anybody else have a question? Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. You mentioned during your presentation that there were, I believe, 41 incidences of sewage discharge into the stormwater system. Can you quantify that as to an idea of how much sewage that involves or what percentage or something along those lines?
I don't have those numbers here, but of course, over a longer term trend line, the number of incidents has been increasing. It is reflected in the experience with extreme weather in every place. So the debate that has been occurring, I think sometimes sensational headlines don't always recognize that we have made progress as measured by species and infrastructure investments, but as we make progress, we're falling behind because climate impacts are accelerating even faster. So my colleagues might be able to get to you during the day with some specific data. We certainly have that, but it is a huge problem, and I think it is one of the rallying cries for improvement.
Well, I believe you also mentioned these occur when you have a 3/4 inch rain. Is that
right.
correct?
Not huge.
Not huge. Thank you.
One quick question, and again, thank you. What is the long-term, I think this follows up on previous question, what's the long-term capacity for building endowment capacity for the management and maintenance of infrastructure? In Detroit, we've spent about $150 million on about 3 miles of waterfront in the Detroit restoration of that piece, so 150 million. But there was not an ounce of concrete poured until there was an endowment behind it to maintain it in perpetuity. What's the vision for an endowment or something like that that would really provide some long-term stability?
That's such a smart strategy, and as a civic organization that tries to take the long-term view that sometimes our governmental partners are more challenged to take, we have found that so often public investments put out the price tag of the construction and not the ongoing maintenance. And in fact, it's at the heart of why we struggle sometimes to contemplate public-private investments, is because we literally are doing the apples to oranges comparison. The public sector number comes out, and it's the design build. It's not the design build, operate, maintain. And so if we can change the debate to say, hey, we're building this facility, but what happens when the roof does leak? Because it will leak at some point, just like all of us as property owners may know. So I think it's up to all of us to shine the light on other places. We at Great Rivers Chicago, and just generally the Metropolitan Planning Council, really like to zero in on examples from other places and shine the spotlight on that. So thank you for mentioning Detroit's experience. If we can do more of that, I think we also earn the trust and the confidence back of our public, because it's really short-term thinking to say, well, it's only going to be $15 million. It's not only going to be $15 million. There's an operations and maintenance cost to that. And by saying that, then we are minimizing surprises in the future, and we can maintain something that people are excited about creating and they want to maintain. So I don't think that that's as deeply ingrained in our public debate, but we're trying to change that. Maybe we can all support each other in that.
Thank you. That's a wonderful vision for the city. I know it's hard work and tough work to put all those comments and thoughts together in that coherent way, but it sounds like you're well on your way to that, and we very much look forward to the fruits of that labor coming out, you said, next year.
We look forward to sharing it with you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.